dude, listen, Rick Collins in the building.
Here I am in
That's
the house.
my man. First and foremost, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on for the Little Guys podcast.
Love it, man.
And just shedding some knowledge and shedding some
Love
light
it.
for everybody, because not only are you just a down-to-earth, amazing human being, because before I even knew you practiced law, you were just a really awesome guy at the gym that pushed some fucking heavy weight.
Thank you, brother. That I do as best I can, no doubt.
That pushed some heavy weight, and you had like this very sturdy, masculine, just awesomeness about
Love you, brother. Love you.
And so I love you, man. I appreciate you coming in. This is the second one. So
this is the second. You know, the first one was 18 months ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Voice and Rizzles.
Right.
We're missing John Panetti. I missed John. John was supposed to be here today.
Yeah.
I missed John, so he'll be listening in. He said that he was going to check the episode out and listen in on it.
So when we did Voice and Rizzles 18 months ago, it was like we were kind of like at the beginning of COVID.
Yeah.
You know, now we're kind of at the end. So we've done sort of like hopefully the bookends of the COVID experience.
I'm hoping that we're at you keep seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and they keep flicking. It's like what is it? Wile E. Coyote. It's like they keep painting a new tunnel. It's like, oh my God, we're down here now. We got to keep it going, man.
Unbelievable.
You saw the stuff in UK?
I did.
UK, that's really good, and Czech Republic.
Yeah.
And Starbucks dropped the vaccine mandates.
Yeah.
Listen, I try not to talk about that shit on the podcast because so many people are just bombarded with this shit all fucking day. Right. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting to constantly listen to it and just be like, oh my God, I hear it on the news. I hear it from my relative who's badgering me to get the booster or get the first shot. Like whatever your standpoint is, just like I've been very much on the side of being pro-choice, and people just express, like, if you want to do something, I say, you want to wear 20 masks, you wear 20 masks. Just know that you got to have that extra clearance on your face. Right. You're going to be knocking into shit. It's crazy. Like, you want to get a million vaccines, get a million vaccines. But it's like, we're how many months now? We're at almost like 2 years.
We're hitting almost 2 years now. Yeah.
2 years of our lives. That's just,
and the economic fallout has been substantial. The personal costs in terms of addiction and mental health issues and educational issues for kids. You know, hopefully we're getting back to a more normalized world again.
I mean, Florida and Texas are basically normal.
Yeah.
They're
I'm actually going to Florida tomorrow.
Really?
I've got a conference to give, so I'll be in Florida this time tomorrow.
Is that the Neurosport?
That is the Neurosport.
So I was going to actually ask you about that. So plug that. What is that conference about?
So it's a new conference. It's Neurosports. It's some of the same people who are involved with the International Society of Sports Nutrition, which is a great group, and has an annual conference in June, have gotten together and are doing it. And my talk is on testosterone. I'm part of a panel dealing with testosterone issues, and kind of a little bit different. The topic is sort of looking at testosterone in the context of some mental health issues, including muscle dysmorphia, if you know what that is, bigorexia, reverse anorexia, probably half of the bodybuilders have it, to some degree. It's relative.
I think the fitness industry as a whole experiences that at one point.
I mean,
Andre actually just talked about slightly. I mean, it was like a 5-second clip on the podcast, but we talked about body dysmorphia really quickly.
Did you really? Okay.
And how substantial it is in the mind, and how people just wind up abusing the gear because they just feel that they don't look good enough.
Right.
And how he just said, I've never been for abusing gear. I've always been for on the side of doing it safely, doing it the right way, and just knowing where you stand. But getting that mentality that you're good enough, like you're making progress. You don't have to just like jump 20 million all in at one and just go crazy.
Correct.
Because that's how a lot of people get hurt.
Sure. And it's a spectrum, I think. There's at the one end of the spectrum is the guy who looks in the mirror and says, you know what, I could look better. I'm not happy with the way I look. Not being happy with the way you look, not being happy about something is probably the first step you're ever going to have to changing it. Because if you're perfectly content in life with something, there's really no motivation to do anything different. So that's probably not a bad thing to be able to say, hey, look, I'm not making enough money. I don't have a set of abs like I would want. I would like to look better. And that's how you're motivated. At the other end of the extreme is the guy who looks in the mirror and he's 280 pounds of 4% body fat, and he looks in the mirror and he's like, you know what, I'm scrawny. I've got no muscle. And so that's the guy who is a more would maybe fit the definition more of the pathology of the psychopathology of muscle dysmorphia. And so we've been looking at sort of these issues of, obviously steroid use sometimes comes from this motivation, this muscle dysmorphia, which is a DSM mental health diagnosed disorder for mental health. So, but yet, of course, the treatment for somebody with muscle dysmorphia is to convince that person you look fine as you are, even if the person maybe doesn't look so fine. And obviously, to give that person testosterone or any anabolic steroid is a crime because it's not considered a medical need. But yet, if somebody has a different diagnosis, which is a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, which is I'm not comfortable in my body based on gender issues, not based on muscle issues. So, for example, a female to male who's interested in becoming more masculine. That person, same kind of body image issue, diagnosed DSM-5, that person is given testosterone. And that person is given the drug to help their body conform to the image of their own self-identity. It's an interesting thing. And I'm not saying that the two are the same or that they should be treated the same, but the disparity in treatment, where one is actually, here you go, come to the doctor and get it. The other, you're getting handcuffed and you're going to prison, and the doctor who prescribes it is going to prison too. It's too much of a disparity, and I don't think anybody's really looked at that or commented on it before. So I'm giving a short lecture on that at Neurosports, and probably again at the Arnold, because the Arnold has an educational component to it. So I'm doing a round table with George Tuliatos and a few others, and then we'll do this. I'll do my own little lecture on this. So I've been lecturing a lot. I'm giving a lecture at ISSN in June on sort of toxic masculinity.
Okay.
And
Jamal and I spoke briefly about it on one of the episodes as well.
Hot topic,
yeah.
Right? And it's could you imagine ever saying toxic femininity in any
it wouldn't be
context?
You'd be
canceled.
Canceled. They'd ship you to the moon.
Right. But toxic masculinity and sort of what is the basis for it? Is it a testosterone issue? Is there such a thing as testosterone poisoning? And does testosterone cause people to act violently or aggressively? Or is it more of status seeking or dominance? Or does testosterone sort of make you more of what you already are? So I'm giving a co-lecturing with this guy, Jack Darkes, who's a professor at the University of South Florida. Great guy, researcher, smart addiction specialist. And so we're doing that. So it's fun stuff.
That's cool. You get to really be around some unbelievable individuals that have so many different experiences, studies, and professions, and you all get to come together and just really put your heads together and go, well, I see it from this angle, I see it from this angle, and I see it from the chemical angle. Is there similarities? Is this the reason why, and stuff like that? Right. I mean,
it's so cool when you can integrate different disciplines. Obviously I'm primarily a lawyer, and I was looking at I wrote some notes down. I watched Lawyers Prepare, right?
Yes.
So 18 months ago, we sat down, we had John over there and this was 2 hours.
Fantastic episode.
It was a 2 hour, I can't believe.
Raving. I didn't have a single person say that they didn't enjoy that. It was unbelievable. And I know this one's going to be 10 times better too. So
thank you.
Seriously.
So it was great. I enjoyed talking to both of you guys. It was a great time. But we covered so much stuff from my background to how I got involved in being sort of fitness law and steroid law and all of that, to what to do if you get stopped for drunk driving, to
that was
what
a hot
to do
clip.
when a package comes in the mail, to all of this different stuff. So it was great, and we can cover some of that as well, and I can tell some war stories as well. But it was a lot of fun. So hopefully we'll have some fun today too.
Oh, for sure. And on the topic of the gender dysphoria, right? That's the correct terminology for it. So we had Alex on Telinka, and Alex talked about everything from transitioning at a young age around, I think he said that he started feeling uncomfortable in his body. Now, Alex was a female originally and transitioned to a male.
Right.
And
Assigned female at birth.
yes.
Right.
And transitioned to a male prior to puberty.
Right.
So getting all the breast tissue out, and if you really didn't know, you have no idea that Alex used to be a female.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
Right.
So,
beard.
Yeah.
Beard like ours.
Yes. So it's just it's kind of just a wild topic to discuss and just see, because obviously, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never had those feelings. Right. So it's very interesting to sit across from somebody and hear them break down and discuss why they felt so uncomfortable a certain way and why now they feel so much more comfortable in their skin. I think everybody is entitled to do whatever you want to do. I think that is the best choice for you. If you think that that's the right path for you, God bless, Godspeed. Do whatever you want to do. Right. I think the people that judge it's like a two point, I guess, method or message, I should say. It's like the people that judge, they either don't understand or they're actually judging because they don't like the person.
Right.
I think it's more on the side of they just don't understand, and what they don't understand, they get confused and they're
afraid.
They automatically reject it.
Everybody's afraid of what they don't understand. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I think everybody has a right to feel comfortable in their own bodies, and everybody should, and certainly if you're uncomfortable with what you're assigned at birth, finding ways to be more comfortable. If medical technology allows it, why not? But we certainly don't do that with respect to bodybuilders who
feel like they don't have enough muscle.
Right. I mean, and maybe we shouldn't. And I'm not saying, and again, I'm not equating the two, but the disparity, and we talked last time a little bit about, sort of the war on steroids thing. And, for those who don't know me, or didn't see the first podcast.
Yeah, give the bio. Let's go.
So just briefly, I started as a bodybuilder. Grew up in the gyms as a personal trainer, as a bouncer, and I told some of those stories last time. And went to law school after college, after competing in bodybuilding when I was in college, and got involved in criminal law, first as a prosecutor, and then later as a criminal defense lawyer. So I developed the courtroom skills, and life has a funny way of helping you find your way. Alanis Morissette or whatever, isn't it ironic? Sounds like the lyrics, but it does. And so I had these two separate tracks, a track as a bodybuilder and a track as a trial lawyer. And I didn't have any real plan or foresight that the two would merge into one, but they did, because organically I gravitated toward what interested me.
Which is amazing, and I want to cut you off, which is amazing because when you are able to combine your passion with your profession, if it's not already, that's not many people get to experience that. That's an unbelievable feeling.
It's a great feeling. If you can find something that you love doing and your passions can be something that you can actually pay the bills with, life doesn't get a lot better than that. It's wonderful. So I wound up, just because of my background in the gym culture as a bodybuilder, competing, and personal trainer, running a personal training business. Ultimately, when the law changed, and timing is a huge factor, right? There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers, which is a great book. And it's about what makes somebody successful versus a failure. And Malcolm Gladwell looks at these different factors. Is it hard work? Is it who your parents are? Is it timing? Each chapter looks at a different factor, and he takes two people with the same factor, and one is a unbelievable success, maybe a name that did phenomenally in life. The other, miserable failure, never really amounted to anything. Same intellect, same parent background, same hard work. And so he compares it. And it's really the combination of a lot of these factors. And one of the main factors is timing. And I went into private practice in 1990, which was the same year that Congress criminalized anabolic steroids. Couldn't have seen it coming. Nope. Went that way. And so when the bros in the gyms, the guys who were my training partners for many years, or like my training partners for many years, started getting questions or maybe interrogated or maybe arrested for an anabolic steroid charge, I started getting the calls. And so I wound up becoming really the only lawyer at the time who was doing really understanding from a personal perspective the bodybuilding community and from the legal and courtroom perspective. And so my career went in a direction that I love what I do, Nikki. I love what I do. You can see me at the gym. I'm in the gym regularly. That's part of my life. It's organic to who I am. And in the courtrooms, I'm able to help the people that are spotting me, as a practical matter. So it's a very cool practice, and that's expanded a little bit. I have a nationwide practice. If somebody is using steroids, testing positive for steroids in a drug test, either as a
professional
athletes, military people on probation, police officers, if you're an underground lab, if you're selling SARMS, if you get caught for selling chemicals for research purposes under circumstances that the government says is bogus, I'm the guy that gets those calls. I love getting those calls. I love helping people out of those problems, and I've gotten very good at it over the years because I've done so much of it, and because I like doing it. And I'm one of the few criminal defense lawyers, I think, who likes my clients, and really whose clients are, by and large, good people. I'm at a point in my career, I don't have to represent people who are robbing or stealing or doing any of the things that hurt other people, either physically, economically, in any way. So it's a great practice. I also represent a lot of people in the supplement industry, in the sports nutrition industry. So and I work with lawyers who do other things. My firm is in New York. We have a lawyer that does phenomenal guy who does personal injury cases, and he caught a car accident, negligence. I don't do that. My partner does. I've got a lawyer that works for me that does an enormous amount of contract work and trademark work, intellectual property stuff. But you find what you love to do and you do it. So that's what I focus on, and law, like medicine, has become a somewhat, specialized kind of field, so that you get really good if you concentrate in a particular area. But I've gotten to go all over the country, on all over the world. I've given lectures in Bangkok, Thailand, and Guangzhou, China, and Canada, and all around. And it's
where was your favorite to visit?
Asia's amazing. Asia's got some incredible places. Guangzhou, China is such a different kind of experience. Not a lot of Caucasians there.
I'm sure.
I would think it's a huge city. It's the same size as New York City, but I think there I only saw maybe 2 other Caucasians in the whole city, and people aren't used to you. Some people actually come up. At first, I didn't know what it was for. They hand you a camera. Their cell phone, as the camera, and they want you to do a selfie with them because you're like the American that they've never really seen before.
Really?
I've heard stories about them handing babies to take a picture of, a big,
Sir, I can't hold your baby.
Than
I can't hold your baby. You're freaking me out. Please take the baby back.
But it was a cool experience. And then, of course, we went. I went with a friend of mine who's also in the industry, and then we went to Hong Kong, and he's been to Asia many, many times. And Hong Kong is more of like a cosmopolitan city, and that's also an amazing city. Actually, at that time, it was the beginnings of the protests as Hong Kong was being turned back to mainland China, with the hope in Hong Kong that the reintegration of Hong Kong into China would westernize mainland China.
The rest of China.
But the opposite happened.
I'm sure.
So they began cracking down on civil rights, and there's a hiking trail in Hong Kong up in the hills, the mountains, called the Dragon's Back, and it's this cool hiking trail. So I wanted to do it. So there was the leader of a little hike group that I was able to join was a lawyer, young female lawyer. And at the end, I wasn't really familiar with Hong Kong politics at the time. It was the beginning of really the unrest. And at the end of the hike, she's like, "Oh, well, I got to go do a protest." And I'm like, what do you protest? What's that about?
Just going there now.
So yeah, so she explained to me what was going on. I was like, well, you're a lawyer, you got a license. Don't get yourself arrested because there's risk. I wonder whatever became of her, but obviously the news and began to spread about as the protests went, and it got pretty crazy at one point. So
and
so it was interesting
what year was
to be
that?
there. That was 2018, maybe.
Okay, so yeah, not too long ago.
Yeah. And I was in Bangkok, Thailand in 2013. That was also an experience.
I'm sure.
That's just a crazy
Stay away from
place to
stay
be.
away from the lady boys.
Look, I don't judge.
No, I'm just saying
not for me personally, but
the bars
okay.
I've heard.
Yes, the bars are crazy. So, but yeah, it's been a cool ride. I love what I do, and I've had just a lot of fun cases, going way back all the way. I represented the chemist in the Balco case, who's a friend of mine. I've had a number of cases involving steroid trafficking, pro-hormones, SARMS, all across the country. I've been consultant on cases in other countries. So it's fun stuff.
Yeah. So I got a question for you. I do want to touch on SARMS with you because I don't know if we really dove into SARMS the last time you were on, and I just kind of want to talk about legality wise and just kind of stuff like that. But how much more comfortable do you think your clients are being you are in the industry and you know bodybuilders and you train and you're in good shape and you've embraced the bodybuilding industry. So when they call you to represent them because something goes wrong, let's say.
Right.
They took steroids, they popped for it or something like that. And I'm not saying that that's something that you do, but I'm just saying you're around it so you know it versus an attorney that has, oh yeah, I practice this type of law and I can represent you potentially for your case,
So I'll answer it this way. I sometimes get calls from clients who hired somebody else. They've hired a local lawyer. Maybe the case is in Georgia, the case is in Alabama or whatever, and so they hire that lawyer, and they wind up calling me up and saying, "Listen, I got this lawyer. He doesn't know what I'm even talking about. He's like, you got to get off that stuff. You're going to kill yourself. You're going to get roid rage. You're on the narcotics, and they're calling them narcotics, and they're treating it as if it's the same as crack or heroin. And they don't understand the mentality of a bodybuilder. They don't understand the difference in usage patterns, which is extremely important. Particularly, a guy can get charged with possession with intent to sell based on a volume in many state courts. So you get, let's say, 1,000 tabs of Thai anabol shipped to your house, and it's intercepted by customs, and they do what's called a controlled delivery, which means some federal agent gets dressed up to look like a package carrier.
UPS.
Whatever it is, and knocks on the door and says, Nikki, here's your package, and you take it, and, you take it in the house, and sometimes that is a trigger for the execution of an anticipatory search warrant, which then allows all the agents who have been hiding in the neighborhood behind cars, waiting for you to accept that package, for them all to rush the door, to go in and to recover the package. Sometimes the package is made in a way or packaged in a way that either something gets on your hands that shows that you opened it, or there's a triggering device that allows them to know that it's open. Sometimes that's the trigger for them to go in. In other cases, the warrant just authorizes them to go in once you accept the package. And once it's in your hands and you've accepted it, the implication is that you intended to possess it. You could say, well, I don't know what was in it. It was a package, so I took it. But that's probably enough for them to have probable cause to put you under arrest. So
and they intercept the package, and then they do all the, I don't want to say trickery, but they do all of the tripwires and stuff like that, and intricacies to make sure that you do open it and accept it.
Correct.
And then they deliver it.
Yep.
Is this something where you see it in a case where someone just orders one, or is this mass ordering?
It depends. It depends on the jurisdiction. I've seen, so getting back to sort of what we're saying, let's say it's got 1,000 tabs in it. If you've got some, maybe
pull that back.
You're good. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
If you have a a particular jurisdiction that maybe doesn't have a lot of activity in it. And
like middle of nowhere,
Utah,
let's say.
Yep, not a lot of other narcotics maybe there, and they get a package of 1,000 steroids in it. That maybe Customs says, "All right, we got this package." They call up the local police department and they say, "What do you want to do with it?" So the police say, we'll make an arrest." So the local guys, not the feds, but the local guys, then do that delivery, and you then accept it. And you've got a prosecutor, agents, and others in the criminal justice equation who are unfamiliar with steroids, and they say, "It's got 1,000 tablets," and they're thinking of it like 1,000
people
hits of ecstasy, or 1,000 packets of heroin. So suddenly, wow, this guy's he must be dealing to the whole high school. This is what's going on. So I've seen people charged with intent to sell violations based on what was really part of a cycle for people, and so local lawyers typically don't understand that. I think a lot of the clients don't feel comfortable with lawyers that they just have a feeling they're being judgy about them. It's ignorance, it's judgmentalism, and so I think a lot of the clients will call me first and say, you were the first one, you were the only one I was going to call, which is great. Others will come later and say, "I wish I called you first. Now can you help me?" And I do, and I work with lawyers across the country.
It's a little stickier when they call you after.
Well, sometimes certain, the cow has left the barn, you gotta corral it back in, which isn't as easy as, preventing it from getting out in the first place. But there's almost always something that I can do. And I look to help people. And a lot of these clients will talk to me not only about their case, but will talk about the gym and benching and diet issues.
Just
and,
how we are.
And I can relate to them and they can relate to me in a way that makes them feel much more comfortable. It's more like talking to a kindred spirit than people are intimidated by lawyers, I think, a lot of the time. And lawyers aren't well liked by a lot of people. I gotta say,
I had a personal injury case years ago. I got hit by a guy doing 80 from the side of my car. He T-boned my car, and the intricacies of it was just shit because he was an illegal immigrant and he had no license and no insurance, and the car was stolen, and there was just a bunch of different things. And I was dealing with just the wreckage of my car that I had just bought a couple of months earlier. It was my first car, my Audi that I saved up for, and here I am with a totaled car and no money to buy something else. Insurance company dumped me, and I go to my mom's friend's attorney. He was a personal injury attorney, Buongiorno. Yeah. And I went to them, and I remember just sitting in the room with them, and I was just because I was 18 years old, 19 years old. I'm just so intimidated. I'm like, I got to go to court. I got to do this shit. Like, what is this? Like, what's going on? I had no idea. And I just remember just feeling just anxiety, and you got to play the part. You got to go to PT. You got to do the steps that they tell you to do, and you're just like, wow, this is like a lot of fucking work, and just the stress levels just kind of increase. So when you have somebody that kind of eases that stress, and you feel comfortable with them, and you know that they have your best intentions and best interest in mind, that's huge.
Yes. Yeah. And that I think has resulted in my practice really, really growing is the relationship that I have with clients. Plus, I try never to be outworked. I work harder than ever. I fully believe in that. And I think any client that has ever worked with me will tell you that. And a lot of my clients refer other clients. That's probably my main source of people is you got to hire Rick. You got to talk to Rick.
It's the word of mouth. I mean,
it is.
It's a big community, but it's also a small community for just bodybuilding. But then obviously you have all the other areas that you specialize in. Yeah. So you deal with so many different people.
But I think it's also important for lawyers to recognize that a lot of people are intimidated by them, and I don't think that's necessarily fair. Lawyers get a bad rap that I don't think is justified. But I think it's incumbent on lawyers to go that extra step to be real people, to be a mensch, to be an ordinary guy, to not try to intimidate people, to go, and I go very hard not to intimidate people, particularly because people like us maybe are more intimidating, based on what we bench and what we do in the gym and whatnot. I don't try to use my physicality in court to try to intimidate people.
He shows a tricep every now and then.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's there. It's sort of like under the surface. It's implicit.
That's mine
too
right now. Yeah.
And so to keep it more of like,
dormant.
you
eat a lot of ice cream.
Oh, come on.
A lot of ice cream and a lot of sushi
I
to
see
keep
you
it all
hitting
under
it
there.
at the gym. I see you at Bev's. Well, shout out to Bev's.
Let's
I see
go.
you there all the time. But yeah. So but yeah, I love what I do, and I love just maybe there's a certain aspect to being a trial lawyer that's kind of the modern day gladiator in a way. You're not using a sword, you're not in the sand, but it's a battle, whether it's a trial or it's even negotiating something to get it where you want it to be. It is strategy. It is thinking 3 steps ahead of your adversary. It is figuring out which choices are the best choices to make. And obviously, the more experience you have in going down that road and making those choices, the better you get at it. And the longer you do it, you can see, instead of 3 steps ahead, 5 steps ahead, and then ultimately 8 steps ahead. So I know from here where it's going to end up, and clients benefit from that, as opposed to, I've had clients who've called me, I've got this lawyer, can you help him? He's never had a steroid case. And it's not,
I'd love to, but that's my job.
It's hard, and I'll sometimes consult, because I don't want to screw anybody over, and I try to help everybody.
You don't want to jack a client, but at the same time, it's like there's only so much I can do.
But yeah, it sometimes the options are fewer for the further you get down the road. So
yeah, I think you've done a very good job at humanizing it as well, as opposed to just another client, another thing. Because listen, attorneys work with so many people,
right.
and I find that the attorneys that I know, it's just like, oh, well, I got this case and I got this case and I got this case, and like that's great, but
right.
These are people that are
right.
fighting for their lives sometimes, and I'm not saying that they don't care, but like you're saying, going that extra step to make them comfortable and just like you're in good hands. I'm gonna do the absolute most that I can do to help you out of this.
Try to make every client feel like he or she is my only client. I'm super responsive, and a lot of the clients, I bet there are some past clients who are going to be watching this podcast and are going to say, oh yeah, there's Rick, because a lot of them, past clients, become my friends on social media. Yeah. They'll follow me on Instagram, Rick Collins ESQ. They'll follow me on Facebook. They'll, because we've taken a journey together, and I've helped them through what is, for many people, the most or one of the most stressful times of their life. It's
scary. I can only imagine.
You're in the jaws of the criminal justice system. It's not a good place to be. State or, God forbid, federal, you're looking at, problems. You're looking at a scary, scary position to be in. And so I'm sort of the guy who's there to protect you, to walk you through this. I don't care. You could be 290 pounds of shredded beef. Now it's the federal government who's got you in its sights, and you need protection. You need legal protection. And so when that journey comes to its conclusion, and the clients typically we've developed a bond from having gone that distance together that lasts. And so I have clients that continue to interact with me years and years, in some cases decades, after their case was done, because I was that part of their journey, and they're appreciative that I played that role in their lives.
And hopefully it's not a residual client on stuff like that. Hopefully they learned the lesson, at least unless they were wrongly accused.
Yes. Yeah.
So because obviously there's that.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a scary thing. I've said before that there is nothing tougher for a lawyer than representing an absolutely innocent client, because the system is designed to force people from arrest to arraignment to conferences to plea to sentence to, that's the system. And so if you've really got an innocent client, you're not going down that road. You're fighting every step of that way. It's like a salmon swimming upstream. It is resistance, and everything is trying to force you back the other way. I don't think I told this story last time. And if anybody wants to hear more of sort of my background, we covered it.
Yeah, we covered it very in depth.
2-hour podcast that we did 18 months ago.
Yeah.
And
it's on the voice. It's for those listening, because I have a lot of listeners coming from TikTok as well that are brand new, that don't know me barely, and they're just getting to know the people that are in my life and the guests that I'm bringing on. So for anybody that wants to listen to that podcast, it's on The Voice and Rizzles, Rizzles. It's on The Voice and Rizzles YouTube page, and that page is still up. And we have over 60 episodes of backdated other guests that we've had, from the fitness industry to entrepreneurs to just every walk of life, because that's really what we strove for on that show, and that's what I strive for on this show, is just bringing people that have unbelievable experiences, whether positive, negative, whatever it might be, that can shed light for other people that are listening and that may have never experienced that. I had my buddy Brandon Stahl on a couple of episodes ago. He's a sergeant in the Army, and he was talking about being over in Afghanistan and being a paratrooper and dealing with stuff like that, and coming back and dealing with PTSD and depression and becoming a cop in Orlando, and how he had to really fight some really bad demons coming back to American soil. And I want to get some more people on.
Mad respect for all of them.
Yeah, he's an unbelievable soul, and I want to get more people on that have some deep stories, because once again, unless it's kind of like the transgender conversation, unless you experience it yourself, you don't really know what these people go through and what someone sitting across the table from you has experienced. So if they can sit there, shed light on it, and talk about it, that's huge, because that could open up XYZ's eyes, and that can
people need to hear it.
Yeah, you just want to hear it. That's what this is for. So Voice and Rizzles, it's on the YouTube page, and we have a lot of episodes on there, and obviously Big Rick is on there, so that's a phenomenal episode as well. Awesome. Speaking about SARMS, so I've heard inconsistencies on the legality of SARMS. Right. So I don't know if you could shed light on that for us, because I'm sure you've dealt with that already.
Yeah. So I guess the short answer is, and I think some of the confusion comes, is that Congress has introduced a bill that would criminalize SARMs as controlled substances. So in other words, you would take all the, whatever, andrin,
Ostarine is one of them I've heard
Andarine, all of them that are out there, and make them into Schedule 3 controlled drugs like anabolic steroids, treating them the same as anabolic steroids.
Same grouping.
Okay. Schedule 3. 5 schedules federally. Schedule 1, the most serious.
Narcotics?
Schedule 1 is marijuana, interestingly,
really?
Because Schedule 1 means no medical purpose. And that's what the whole problem is, right? Because if it was Schedule 2, then federally you could have medical marijuana. Because it's Schedule 1, there is no medical marijuana federally. So that's why the states are in violation of the federal.
They're in violation, but they're doing it anyway.
Correct. So yes,
and so
the federal government seems to be sort of like,
what kind of legal kickback is that then? Would the federal government technically go after the states then?
They apparently haven't, and I don't think they will, because you've got a majority of the country that now is in favor of legalization of marijuana, but it's just sort of taking its time to get there. But that's Schedule 1. Schedule 2 is cocaine and other things. Schedule 3 is steroids. Schedule 5 is the lowest. So those are all controlled substances. It would put SARMs into Schedule 3. That hasn't passed. So because that hasn't passed, some people think, well, okay, then SARMs are not illegal because they're not controlled substances yet. Well, it's not quite that simple, because if you're selling SARMs as a dietary supplement.
So the supplements, let's just say a supplement store is just selling SARMs.
They don't fit the definition of a dietary supplement in the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And because they don't fit that definition, you can't be selling it. It's an unapproved drug.
So currently it's illegal to sell SARMs still?
As a dietary supplement, yes.
So how do you classify that then?
Well, you can't sell it as a dietary supplement, and you can't sell it as a research chemical under circumstances that would make it clear that this isn't really for research. I mean, if you
research on how much muscle you can put on,
right? Yes. So the government doesn't really buy that.
Yeah.
So that puts SARMs into sort of an unapproved drug category. Some of them are being approved, but you can't sell a drug that's an approved drug unless you're a pharmacist, right? So they're in that category of drugs that are not allowed to be sold if they're not approved. So it's an unapproved drug. So introducing an unapproved drug into interstate commerce is a federal crime. So you've seen some people jammed up for SARMS, and that's why.
And pro-hormones.
And pro-hormones. And I represented more people on pro-hormones than anybody back in the day. Represented people all across the country. I had pro-hormone cases spread out everywhere. The law changed in 2014 that made pro-hormones, really lumped them in with other steroids that had been classified as controlled substances since 1990. So I still get some of those cases here and there. But yeah, I've gotten a lot of interesting cases, both in the area of SARMs and the area of steroids. I had one case, you said before, an innocent client. Innocent clients are tough, So I wound up getting a call. I don't think I told you this story the last time we were talking. I got a call from a woman in the West, I won't say what state, who calls me up and says, "You got to help me. I need help. I'm charged with selling steroids. I didn't sell any steroids." So I'm like, okay, what are they saying you did? She goes, they're saying I sold one 10cc vial of test for $100. I run a small personal training gym. It's for business people. I'm a competitive bodybuilder. I'm a female bodybuilder, a nationally ranked competitive female bodybuilder. I'm not saying I don't use steroids, but I'm not distributing. I would never sell a steroid. And the idea of selling a steroid, these are business people in my gym. I would never think about doing that. I said, okay, I'll try to help you. So I call up the prosecutor and I say, listen, this woman called me. She said, you're charging her with selling a vial of testosterone. And she's telling me she didn't do it. He goes, well, let me tell you what this case is about, okay? So I have a confidential informant who is working off his own case. And that's typically very often the way cases work. Somebody gets arrested for drugs and they sit down with the government, with their lawyer or with the state, and they point out other people, and maybe they actually set up other people in order to work off their case.
They cut a deal.
Yeah. So he says, okay, so I've got this confidential informant. And what he did was he called up your client on the phone and he had a conversation with her where he asked her about setting up training lessons, personal training, asked her about some diet, and then asked, listen, if I come down, would you sell me a vial of testosterone? And she said, yeah, for $100. And what I'll do is I will hide it in a bottle of multivitamins when you come in tomorrow. That conversation, he says, was not recorded, but the confidential informant after that call called up the agent he was working with and said, hey, I got a live one. That woman who runs the personal training facility, she's willing to sell me steroids and she's going to hide it in a bottle of vitamins. She's going to do it tomorrow if I go down there. Agent says, let's do it.
Yeah, go down.
Let's do it. Here's what we're going to do. He meets the agent the next day. The agent does a pat down of him, which is standard procedure. The agent gives him...
Is that to make sure that he doesn't already have something on him?
Yes.
Okay.
To make sure that he doesn't have,
a
some
vial
drugs
already
secreted on his person somewhere. Gives him the $100, wires him up so that the conversation that occurs inside the gym will be recorded, lets him drive his own car to 3 blocks to the personal training, the agent waits outside, guy goes in, and a transaction occurs inside. The prosecutor tells me the guy walks out, gives the agent a bottle. Inside the bottle is a multivitamin bottle. The agent opens up the bottle, looks inside, and there is a vial of testosterone, just like the guy said would happen, just like he said the day before. Okay, so now we've got her on that. 3 weeks later, they conduct a search warrant of the house, the woman's house, where she lives with her powerlifter husband, and they find some steroids in the house.
I'm sure, not just for her.
Happens to be actually in his side of the bedroom, nothing in her side of the bedroom. And the steroids don't match the vial that was inside the bottle, but it's steroids. So the prosecutor says to me, so we got a problem here. So here's the problem. In this state, it's 3 strikes and you're out. The drug conversation on the phone the day before, the actual transaction itself, strike 2. The drugs in the house, strike 3. You put them together, she's got a 10-year prison term that she's looking at for 1 vial of
One vial.
He goes, no, look, I'm not trying to ruin her life. She pleads guilty to a felony, and I'll give her straight probation. She'll never do a day in jail. I call her up. I'm like, this is what I'm just going to tell you what this guy is saying.
And it was clear as day. It was her voice recorded
voice.
on it.
Yep.
Okay.
She says, I'm telling you, I'm not taking it. I will not plead guilty. I did not sell anything. I didn't sell a single vial. He is lying. I'm not doing it. Absolutely not. So this is where we are.
Wall in a hard place. You're stuck right there.
So
You're like, okay.
I said, okay. So I asked her some more questions to try to get a better sense of it. I'm like, so tell me, I listened, I said to the prosecutor, send me the recording. Let me listen to the recording. So I get the recording and I listen to it, and it's somewhat equivocal. You hear him say, they go in a room, he's asking about training, he's asking about diet. At some point he says, oh, do you have that bottle of multivitamins we talked about?
Oh, God.
And she says, oh, yeah, here it is. And, you hear ring up in the cash register, and you then hear some other stuff rustling around. There were 2 things that I was able to do that made the difference in that case. Number one is that was a state where, unlike most states, you had the ability to depose the prosecution witnesses before they actually go to trial. So I call up the prosecutor. I'm like, listen, I want to depose the snitch and I want to depose your cop, your agent.
And depose, for those that don't know, meaning sit down and
sit down and have an interview just like we're having, to find out what the case is about and find out what they did and to be able to cross-examine them a little bit. So he says, okay, we set up a date. I fly out to that state, drive, up into the mountains where this little town was. The next, I wind up, I got local counsel because it was a little tiny town. So I got a lawyer. That other lawyer, apropos to what we were talking about before, spent most of the meeting the day before trying to convince her to take a plea. Plead guilty. You got to plead guilty. No, I'm not plead. She's fighting. She's resisting all the way. She doesn't want to plead guilty. He's trying to make her plead guilty. I'm like, you know what? Don't plead guilty. Let's fight it. Let's see what happens. So we come in the next day. I talk to the prosecutor. The prosecutor says, I got bad news. What's the news? The snitch is not available today. He had an emergency and he can't come in. I'm like, I just flew from New York.
How fucking convenient is that?
This is not right. You should. He's like, well, I don't know what to tell you, but I could maybe get him available by phone. So I'm like, so I'm going to depose a witness by phone. That's a crazy thing. He's like, well, your other choice is I'll reschedule for a month from now. But the probation deal runs out next week.
Yeah, of course, it expires. Of course.
So I've got to make a choice. So I make a bold choice. And the bold choice is get that guy on the phone.
Oh, really?
I say get the guy on the phone because I think I've got enough to be able to knock this guy, to give him a knockout punch. Because I'd listened to the tape. And the tape, the recording has him going into the room with her, having that conversation, coming out, having a conversation at the counter where she gives him the bottle of multivitamins. His claim is it's $100. He says she never rang it up in the cash register. She actually gives me an advance. I had the cash register receipt timed to when he's in there for $25, which was the cost of the multivitamins. So I've got him in a lie. So, and I've got some other stuff. So I got him on the phone and I started asking him, I'm like, okay, so you're inside and you're claiming that she gave you a bottle of multivitamins and inside it was these steroids. That's your claim. That's what you're telling us. Yes. Oh, yes. That's what she did. Okay. And so these drugs that she gave you, she didn't ring it up in the cash register, right? Well, no. I mean, nobody's ringing up a drug transaction in a cash register, right? Well, of course not. Of course not. Okay. Little does he know I've got the receipt that shows he's lying.
Yeah.
So then I said, so when you were done with this drug transaction, the first thing you did, of course, was to go outside and give this bottle to the agent, right? Because you knew this was the evidence that you had collected, right? This was the drugs. You didn't go somewhere else, right? And he's like, no. Well, I think I went to the bathroom. I'm like, wait a minute. So you went to the bathroom before? You did that before you gave this precious, the drugs to the agent? He goes, yeah, I had to go so bad. I'm like, number one or number two? He goes, number one. I'm like, okay. So your bladder is so engorged. It's exploding.
Can't handle anymore.
Couldn't handle another. So you had to now go to the bathroom before you give this evidence to the police officer. Yes. And you took the bottle with you. Well, yeah. So you went into the bathroom, you closed the door, you locked the door, and it's just you and that bottle in the bathroom, right? Yes. What he didn't realize, knucklehead, was that the tape was running, the recording was going the whole time. You hear him go into the bathroom, you hear him lock the door, you hear him put his keys on the porcelain of the sink. You hear the rustling of cellophane.
The wrapper, he opened it up.
And you actually hear the sound of tablets hitting the toilet as he scoops out enough to be able to take wherever he had hidden, because the cop let him drive his own car. Could have had that in the car.
Yeah, I was gonna say he patted him down, but
Patted him
like
down,
at the
but-
same
and
time,
then
there's
lets
no
him-
re-
and
there's
then
no
lets him drive the
recording,
car.
and there's no recording of him watching
Correct.
him get patted down.
And then lets him drive the car,
Genius.
puts it in there, closes it up, and gives it to the cop. I confront him with this. He's like, what you don't hear? A single drop.
Of urine. No,
Not one drop.
no number two.
Nothing.
No urine.
Nothing. So I confront him with this, and there's silence, and he goes, I don't like the way this is going. I said, I can understand that. There's a name for it. He goes, really? I go, yeah, it's called perjury. It's what you've done. He's like, I think I want to talk to my lawyer. I go, that'd probably be a good idea. He hangs up the phone.
Let me ask you this: is that conversation that you just had with him recorded?
Yeah.
No, nice.
So hangs up the phone. The prosecutor's sitting there white as a sheet. He goes, would you take a misdemeanor? I said, okay, I'm going to tell you how this is going to go.
Yeah, let's explain.
You're going to dismiss the charges against her completely, and I'm going to try to convince her not to sue you, the cop, and the entire police department and the DA's office for the travesty that you've just done here. He goes, I can live with that.
Okay. Yeah, I would assume
And
so.
so we did. And so that was one where, you save somebody's life, innocent client. Scary even as a lawyer, it's scary to have that responsibility, but she was adamant, and I believed her from the very beginning, and she's still one of my friends on social media, and it's very cool, and is always saying very nice things about me, and
I wonder why.
To be right, but,
wonder
but
why.
Save
your life.
It's those are the things you look back on as I'm sure doctors do it, whatever it is, you look back and you say, wow, what a difference I made in this person's life. What a gift for me to be able to have had that experience. And so, so that's, there are times I look back on my career, and hopefully there's more times ahead for it.
Plenty.
where, you know, you're like, wow, this was really good. This was a really good thing.
So now, did anything happen to her husband? Was he prosecuted on anything?
He wound up, I think, taking like a misdemeanor or something for what was in the house, and it was like no big deal.
Damn, he got
yeah.
pinched because of that, because of a bullshit.
Yeah.
Someone just making up
and you know
something
what's
up.
scary is that, you know, he was just lying, and what he had done was, I mean, think of the. I mean, he was a knucklehead on one level, but he was Machiavellian in another, because he figured out what he would say, right? He worked out with her on the phone call for her to give him the bottle of multivitamins. He figured in advance what he would do. He told the cop how it was going to go, and then he conformed the transaction to be what the cop expected. Sick stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he picked somebody who was a competitive bodybuilder who, if we had gone in front of a jury,
they're going to look at her and go, yeah,
there's issues there.
You look like you take stuff. So
there's going to be issues. There's going to be definite bias. It would have been a tough jury selection process to find jurors who would be able to separate their perception of what she looked like with what the allegations were.
And that's actually a good transition. Do you find that a lot in these cases that the perceived biases is what alters jurors' minds instantly, almost, when they take a look at the person before they even hear a case?
Yeah, you know, it's. I think that if you look like you're, you know, 400 pounds of shredded beef, you know, and
Wagyu,
you're accused.
sirloin.
It depends what you're accused of, but, you know, certainly, you know, I've represented a number of folks in, let's say, police departments or military, and some of them are, you know, very either power lifters but guys who, you know, a trier of fact might look at and make presumptions about, and that doesn't help. You know, you've got to try to separate that out. You know?
Yeah, that was always a question or something that I saw a lot. So there's a lot of police officer and first responders that are blatantly taking.
Yeah.
Because you can tell they're fitness influencers on the side as well.
Right.
And that was always my question. It's like, you look at this person and I know they get drug tested, but you're looking at them and you're just like, I mean, they know you're taking stuff. So what is, you know, I've had people ask me that too, because some of these people I know, and they're like, so the department just lets him do that? And I go, I don't really know the answer.
Well, there's therapeutic use exemptions, you know, for testosterone replacement, and, you know, some guys go in that route, and other guys go with other things that may not show up in drug tests and things like that. Yeah, I've had a number of cops and firefighters who've gotten jammed up. You know, I wound up doing a trial in the New York City trial room with a cop who their position, the position from
you could either shift over. I was going to tell you too. It's a scissor arm, so you could always move it too.
Yeah. So the city of New York had decided that this guy violated their policy against steroids and growth hormone for testing positive for clenbuterol.
Okay.
Clenbuterol is not a steroid. Clenbuterol is not a growth hormone.
And correct me if I'm wrong, it's used for asthmatics, technically.
It is, you know, yeah. So it's a drug that's not approved in the United States. It's used in other countries. We have albuterol, which is a very similar drug. Maybe it doesn't have the same thermogenic fat burning effect, but clenbuterol is a pharmaceutical drug in many countries that's used as a bronchodilator for people with asthma, but bodybuilders and fitness people will use it pre-contest, typically to get leaner, to, you know, lean out. And so he got tested, and unfortunately, even though the policy was against steroids and growth hormone, the lab they sent it to did a standard doping test as if you were an athlete. So they tested for all the sorts of things, including clenbuterol. And my position was, he didn't fail because, you know, clenbuterol is not banned here. So why are we doing this? And I actually
had maple syrup. It doesn't matter.
So I had a conversation with the you know, prosecutor, and I'm like, you know, he's tested positive for clenbuterol. It's a asthma medication. It's not a steroid. I understand the theory whether you agree with it or not, I understand the theory that steroids, are associated, regardless of the truth of it or not, with hyperviolent behavior, with roid rage, with maybe police brutality or something like that. And so I could understand at least some connection there, true or not. But nobody's beating somebody up for clenbuterol. I mean, it doesn't even make any sense. And it's not even a controlled substance. So she said, well, we have a zero tolerance policy. So I'm like, well, zero tolerance against steroids and growth hormone. I get it. Great. She goes, but this isn't either of those. Yeah. She's like, yeah, but we have a zero tolerance policy. Yeah, but so it was just this circular conversation that ultimately resulted in me trying the case. So I wound up in the full trial room of the police department, calling witnesses, and I called up experts in different
physiologies and sports science.
Yeah, and including in dietary supplement contamination cases to be able to show that there have been cases. Jessica Hardy, for one, Olympic swimmer, who tested positive for clenbuterol, never took clenbuterol, took a dietary supplement. So I had all of the evidence, and ultimately we won in the trial room, which doesn't happen often. Most of those cases are convictions of the cops who go in there. So another client who is still on my social media, and
I would be too.
Another good guy.
I'd have the post notifications on every time you post it. I'd have that finger thumb up. I'd be like, oh my god, I can't do it fast enough for Rick.
So yeah, so it's been cool. It's been a very cool ride.
On something like that, are they more annoyed, or I'm not even annoyed, I guess I should say? Are they more concerned with that they purchased an illegal, like, I know you said it's not an illegal substance, but it's also not used in the US, so it's like, where did he get it?
Yeah, I mean, that was I'm sure that was in their minds. On the other hand, there have been people in the US who've tested positive because they took a dietary supplement product that was contaminated with it, and I was able to show a number of different cases of that. So,
and is that because of the actual substances that are in the dietary supplement, or is it because of where it's processed in a plant?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways that sports nutrition products, particularly, but any dietary supplement, can get contaminated. It can happen from the raw materials that come from China, because that's where all of these raw materials come from, and they may be mislabeled. There may be contamination at that level. There could be cross contamination here in the U.S. at the manufacturing level. It could be mislabeling. I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways that it can happen.
It's scary to think about it, and not even in a legal standpoint, just in a consumption standpoint.
I mean, look, it goes all the way back to years ago. There was a Olympic swimmer named Kicker Wenzel who took a multivitamin product and tested positive for steroids from a multivitamin. And, it's not the dog ate my homework either, because they actually tested a bottle of it, a sealed bottle, and it had steroids in it. So
now was that a contamination across their entire line, or is that just one bottle that just happened to
it could be just a single batch. It could be, it wouldn't be everything, but a lack of cleaning the equipment, kind of like the DMAA, or things like that. Yeah.
It's kind of like that thought process where, it's already in there and we don't know if that ingredient's going to start popping, and then it's illegal and we have to start taking things out.
So it wound up that he wound up suing the manufacturer of the dietary supplement product, got, I think, a $600,000 or some kind of a settlement with them. And so, but it happens.
But it also puts him through hell for the time being. So.
For an Olympic athlete, it could be the end of your career depending on when it happens. And so really bad stuff.
When you were talking about the association of just a mental craziness with steroids association, I constantly think back to like the Chris Benoit.
Right.
That's the thought process that I go through.
Right.
When I hear that stuff, because I mean, I know a lot of bodybuilders.
Right.
I know a lot of bodybuilders on steroids.
Right.
I also know a lot of bodybuilders that are extremely friendly.
Right. Right.
Year round when they're taking
that's right.
high dosage, low doses. So you get that, I want to say, classification of this is what's going to happen to you if you take it. Right. And this is why we have to get it off the streets. And this is why it's horrible. And it's like, I'm not disagreeing with certain legalities, which I kind of want you to touch on in terms of like your thought process on anabolic steroids and should they be illegal? Right. Should certain ones be illegal instead of others? But I feel like they always kind of point to those one-off cases, because you don't hear about too many of them.
Right.
They point to one of those. That's what's going to happen.
Right.
That's why we got to clean it up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anecdotal evidence is often the worst evidence because it's, that one-off becomes like the whole story, right? Statistics are a little bit better. There have been studies to try to figure out, do some people respond poorly to anabolic steroids? Do they have hypermanic kinds of episodes? And there's a doctor up in Boston who's done an enormous amount of research. I don't agree with everything necessarily that his positions are, but his position is that there's probably 5% of the steroid-using population that have these sorts of psychiatric disturbances when they take typically large amounts. And dose is also super relevant, right? It's like you could say that alcohol will kill. Well, yeah, if you drink a quart of scotch a night for a number of years, your liver's going to rot out, you're going to die, right? So, but if you drink a glass of wine a night with your dinner, you can't equate those two, and you can't extrapolate the effects of the quart of scotch to the glass of wine. So most of the research that he's done ultimately suggests that typically under a gram a week, you really don't see much in the way of psychological issues.
And that's
at
a
all.
gram of what?
A gram of total steroids, but yes,
Okay.
yeah. So a gram of total anabolic steroids, which typically for many people is a gram of test to start for some, and then beyond that. So once you're getting up into those gram, 2 grams, 3 grams, you're going to see in a very small, again, it's a small population, probably 5% of the steroid-using, community, you'll see some hypermanic behavior, which can be expressed through aggressive behavior or hypomanic behavior. Roid rage. And usually, even in that 5%, there's a segment of pre-existing mental illness, confluence with other drug use and other factors that make that even that 5% probably less than 5%. The chances of somebody with no pre-existing mental issues whatsoever, not using other recreational drugs, taking less than a gram of steroids a week, having a psychiatric issue is extremely low.
Where's your control? Where's your control to see where the outliers versus somebody that has no pre-existing conditions?
Right.
You have to be able to show these factors.
Right. Yeah. So it's very hard. Now, obviously, there's also negative physical effects. Positive physical effects, negative. Everything's got both, right? Yeah. And some people are more prone to gynecomastia than others. Some guys have to take an anti-estrogen, or it's boob time. Others can take massive amounts. Some get you've seen guys with back knee that's horrendous. You've seen other guys, clear skin is as clear as a newborn baby, on much higher doses. So, obviously orals affect the liver in ways that injectables don't. So the guy who's taking massive amounts of orals is going to be stressing the hell out of his liver. But the media doesn't do us a service in this or almost any other
anything to be honest.
This
is new media,
let's call
right
it
here.
right. Yes, this is new media, and this is better media. The legacy media really isn't doing us a lot of good when it says things like steroids cause liver problems, because it's really only the oral steroids, because of the C17 alkylation process that makes them survive the first pass through the liver. Those are really the only ones that are having an effect on people's livers. So, and that kind of comes back to the idea that when the media tries to scare the public about something in ways that the public, or at least the relevant population, begins to suspect is not true, and that they're being hoodwinked to a degree, sometimes it has a rebound effect. It actually makes it worse, because there may be some truth to some of this stuff. And there is. For example, take a lot of oral steroids,
You're
it's
gonna have
not
a
going to
liver
be good.
problem.
Right. But when you just sort of dumb it down and say things that really are too generalized or are ultimately untrue and can't be proven, that the relevant population then disbelieves everything that you say. You have no longer any credibility whatsoever. And some of that is a problem, because some of the things may be true and may be things to be careful about, And so there's that backfire that occurs when, the legacy media isn't truthful. If you remember back in the very beginning, there was this concerted effort that the way that you could stop people from using anabolic steroids would be to convince them that they don't work. And so there were these published papers that came out from the sports medicine community, which were lapped up by the legacy media and spit out to the public. Steroids don't work. They don't improve athletic performance. Well, I guess if you measure athletic performance by hand-eye coordination or some factors, I guess you could torture that into some truth. But virtually anybody in the gyms at that time knew that that was complete nonsense. And so when they said they don't work and they can have these dangers, the response was to completely disbelieve all of it. But they do have dangers.
They do, yeah.
Like any
Just
drug.
like
You take a bottle of aspirin, you're not waking up. You take one, your headache goes away. So the devil's in the dose.
Get hooked up on Vicodins, and they gave you a couple because you fucked your knee up, and then all of a sudden
could be very good, right?
Now you're into Vicodin popping
Could be
pills.
very bad, right? So yeah. So I think the media definitely does us a disservice, and that's why I think you now see a lot of people moving away from legacy media and moving toward the success of podcasts and and new media.
Just straight to the point kind of thing. We're not the new term, and I don't know how new it is, but I hear it a lot now, especially with the COVID talk. I hear the fear porn, the constant the fear, just like the steroids.
Right.
This is what's going to happen. Don't leave your house. Don't do this. Right. Don't do that. And then people, after a while, they just go, just shut up. You're just always selling an agenda.
Right. And fear is often the agenda. And I've done, I write a column for Muscular Development Magazine. I've been writing it for...
Shout out to MD.
Shout out to MD.
Love them. Ron
Harris, and my friend George Tuliatos, who has a column there, and so many others. And Steve Blackman.
Yep.
But I've been writing for them for 20 years, and I've done columns on so many different things, and I've done a few columns on this sort of culture of fear issue, that the way that the media uses fear, and special interest groups use fear and marshal fear as a currency, and the media is more than happy to take that currency. The old adage, something in your refrigerator is killing you, film at 11, and so you're now enticed to tune in and watch those soap commercials that are being, sponsored by thousands, if not millions of dollars of corporate money.
And the new way of doing that is clickbaits.
Right.
So clickbaiting
That's
somebody. Nikki Rizzle said what to this professional athlete, and it's like, what did he say? And then at the end of the video, I just said, "Sup?"
Right.
Like it's not, and it was nothing. And they got the view, they got the ad revenue from you watching it, because you're just like, where does he say it? What's going on? And you sit there and you're waiting. It's like those ads where they have the drawing. Sit down, because we're going to explain to you how 10 steps into how to improve your life.
Right.
And you're never going to understand how you didn't know this before.
Right.
And when we get started, you're really going to love this. But before we get started, it's like, dude, just get to the point. But they're drawing it out, because they're making you sit on that site, and they have a little ad in the top left corner that says increase your libido.
Right. That's right.
And that's what they're paying, that's who's paying them millions of dollars to have them just sit there and watch it.
Right.
So it's that fear porn type mentality that just, I think thankfully people are starting to just close out of their mindset. And I think that the sooner we do
I
that.
hope so.
I mean, I haven't watched any news since this whole COVID stuff started, and it's not just because of COVID. It's
getting
political.
burning out.
It's
burning
everything.
out.
I just don't want to hear about anything. It's everything's fucking negative.
Yeah.
The world is ending tomorrow.
Yep.
I'm tired of hearing about it.
Yep.
I talk to my people. I talk to amazing people every single week. I get to interact with my clients, shoot amazing videos, travel around, shoot with different companies. Unless an asteroid's coming right for us, nuke.
Right.
Don't talk to me. Leave me alone.
Right. Yeah.
Because y'all are just going to keep doing what you're going to do anyway, and the numbers are just going to keep plummeting.
And people are so afraid now to say anything because you say something wrong and you're canceled.
That's
it.
We're
living in this crazy cancel culture. Even Arnold got canceled. Fairly recently. And
all the athletes were uprising, and they were not agreeing with what he said. And listen, when it comes down to it, it's okay to not agree with what someone says.
Right.
That is part of you being a human being. I don't agree with everything everybody says. Doesn't mean I have to say anything about it.
Right.
I don't have to say something about everything.
And it doesn't mean we have to cancel somebody,
Correct.
Look,
for all the other accolades,
I don't necessarily agree with what he said.
I don't either.
However,
but I didn't rip my Arnold poster off my wall.
Right. And that I think is part of the problem is that, suddenly somebody says something that I don't agree with, that I don't like. And so decades of other things that person has said that I do like, maybe things that person did that I do like, maybe charitable endeavors that person did, maybe that person did all these good things, but that one statement, that one stupid statement that they make
in a 10-second clip,
in a 10-second clip that's probably out of context anyway, is now I need to cancel this. Shut the fuck up. Come on, really? And it's, I think there is a lot of that going on. It's virtue signaling on both sides, and that's not right. It's like, you know what? There's nobody listening, watching, you, me, nobody who hasn't said something that they regret. There's nobody, and something that's stupid. And then you look back on it and you're like, that was not the right thing to say.
Yeah.
And if that one stupid, asinine thing that we say becomes the basis for our entire lives being wiped out, and now you're just I'm now canceled, I'm dead to, I think it's time to drop back and rethink ourselves as a culture, because that's not a good place to be.
Once again, we go back to the point of you can disagree with somebody. Just because you disagree with somebody, if you don't want to support that person anymore, that's fine.
Sure.
But to blast it out in hopes that there are droves of people that are going to come and help you. And this isn't just for Arnold.
No.
This isn't just for any. This is just
I'm talking generally.
This is, and I know I'm just saying in general. This is just like if Chick-fil-A CEO comes out and says something, and now they rally around.
Right.
Fuck Chick-fil-A. Let's burn them to the ground. It's like, really? It's like, maybe just don't buy a sandwich. The pitchfork.
The Twitterverse has become like these people with bunch
of keyboard warriors.
Keyboard warriors with torches. It's like the villagers who come storming with the torches. Over the slightest thing.
They play telephone.
Right. You've used
Susie did what?
You've used the wrong word, and now we're gonna come after you.
Yeah.
And
it's just a very weird society. I think it's a very weak society in a lot of ways, because they're looking to be the next viral sensation when they cancel somebody.
Right.
I want to be at the forefront for me telling everyone to go fuck off with this guy.
Well, I think
now everyone joins in.
We're actually giving points. I think you get virtue signaling points by being the first to call out.
Exactly.
That I'm more virtuous than you. I've found you use that word, and you're now canceled, and I'm going to be the one who points it out. And it's almost like a modern day McCarthyism. That's not at all good.
It's strange behavior. It's that social. I want to be the next sensation online where people see my video. That's why you see all these, and we're kind of getting off topic, which I don't mind and I love, because we can go into a million different ways, because we're both well versed on a little bit of everything.
Yes.
But it's like when you see a woman get assaulted on the train and all the men just sitting there. Like,
Sure.
no, everyone's got their phone out instead, because they want to record the assault. They don't want to actually get their fucking hands dirty and deal with something. And I'm not saying that you got to jump into someone else's problem, but at least have the courage to put the phone down, maybe call help.
Right.
Call for, if you're not going to get involved, why don't you call somebody instead? No, they will all, you see a circle of phones, and who's going to upload it first, and who's going to get it to TikTok, and who's going to, it's like, guys, we're living in the society, like now.
Right.
We're living in a actual tangible world. The digital world, although great and you can become famous overnight, don't chase that shit. Be real, like be present. There are people that could be hurt, and there are people that their livelihoods and their businesses and their legacies, like you just said, could be destroyed just because you were hoping that your video was going to be the one.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I think the more time we can spend in the real world and the less time we can spend in the, the virtual digital world.
The metaverse.
Yeah. The meta. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I try to spend a lot of time. I mean, I obviously I'm active on social media like you are, but I try to spend as much time in the real world, and I try to have real world experiences and real world, interactions with people. I try to do things that are different. I think we talked a little bit. I'm a licensed skydiver, so I've done a number of skydives. It's great stuff. I've climbed some mountains with some of the ISSN guys and other stuff. Did a couple of days hiking and camping in the Grand Canyon. These are there's a whole world out there. It's an amazing world.
And, and people forget that
it's not in the keyboard. It's actually,
and they forget that it's in the United States too.
Right.
They think they have to go to other countries. There's an amazing country that we live in that you only experience. Oh, I'm going to go to Nashville and just go get shitty on in the town. Was it? It's not Bourbon Street. That's New Orleans.
It's a Broadway.
Broadway. That's what it is. So I'm just going to get shitty on Broadway. It's like, well, did you explore any else of Tennessee and see any of the other areas? Because
I always try wherever I go. I try to have an experience of some kind. That so if I'm in Vegas, I've done like the gun store there. That's shooting cool. The automatic weapons and just different stuff. I once was in Detroit on a meeting, and I had a layover for about 8 hours. It came in the day before, so I had like 8 hours to kill in Detroit. And so the question becomes, what do you do in Detroit if you've got like 8 hours to kill? And so I had a friend who is a female bodybuilder, but also a police officer in Detroit. And I call her up and I say, listen, I'm coming to Detroit. I got a few hours to kill. Can you hook me up with a ride along?
Okay.
She's like, yeah. I'm like, I know you're in like the worst precinct in Detroit, and Detroit is like the murder capital of the country.
Gary, Indiana's next to it.
So if I'm gonna be in Detroit and I got some time, it would be kind of cool to do a ride along. And I had done maybe some ride alongs when I was in the DA's office because I was a prosecutor before I did criminal defense work. So she goes, yeah. So she picks me up. We go to the precinct, and she sits me down. I'm sitting on a bench. The captain comes out. He gives me a form. Of course, the form is the waiver form. So you're signing away whatever happens in this ride along. Lawyer. I'm going to be looking at these pages. Okay, I get it. I know what it is. I want the experience. And I want the experience in the worst precinct in Detroit. So comes back out, and somebody gives me a bulletproof vest that says police in big letters right across the front, and a big black walkie-talkie like this big. So they go, okay, wait over there. Two people come out. One's an African-American guy, looks a little like Denzel Washington in Training Day.
Okay. So you're like, oh no, please don't be like Denzel.
And the other is this, blonde female officer, sturdy, strong-looking blonde female officer. And so the two of them say, come with us. So I walk outside. We get into the back. They open up the back door of a black unmarked Dodge Charger. I get in the back seat, passenger side. She's on the passenger side, and he's on the driver's side. We start driving. So we're driving along. I'm sitting in the back seat. I'm trying to make some small talk. Crickets. Talk a little bit more, make some conversation. They're not interested. They're just, So I get the sense. Okay, so I'm a lawyer, right? I'm a New York lawyer. Can't get worse than that here. And so, look at he's, homeboy's gonna think he wants to come on the ride along. Okay, all right, let's
shake him. Let's shake him a little bit.
Yeah, they're probably not happy that they have to, babysit me, in this thing. So they don't really want to talk to me. So okay, so I'm just looking out the window. I'm waiting. I'm hanging out. And we'll get into like the really bad area, which is all these tiny little houses that, some of them have no windows, some of them have no doors, some of them are stringing electric lines to, steal the electric from the one house and poach it to the other houses on the block. There's people moving around of course, everybody in the neighborhood knows this car. So as soon as it's coming down, people are shifting away, turning their backs, okay, I get it. So at this point, there's been no discussion about what this ride-along will entail. What is my role in it? What are the limitations that are imposed?
And why do I have a walkie-talkie?
What am I doing with this walkie-talkie? And why do I have a bulletproof vest? So suddenly he stops the car. He gets out. She gets out. As she gets out, she pulls my door handle. So I assume, okay, that means I'm supposed to get out of the car. So I get out of the car and I look back and he has the trunk of the car open. He slams the trunk, he turns and he starts running up the block. She begins running after him. Now they're running away from the car. They're running away from where I am.
And you're sitting there by yourself now.
So I'm standing there by the side of the car myself and I'm looking around and I'm like, everybody knows who this car is. I've got police across the front of I'm unarmed. All I've got is this walkie-talkie.
And what's better?
I don't know where they're going.
What's better? Do I chase after them or do I sit and be a potential target just sitting in the car by myself?
That's right. So I say...
Which is terrifying.
So I say, you know what? So I start... He's running, she's running, I'm running. So the three of us are running up the block. I have no idea where we're running. He's running. Suddenly, he makes a left turn and begins running up toward the steps of a house. And I see when he makes the turn that he's got a black cylinder about this big under his arm. She now has her gun out. And she now makes a turn and she's running after him. I now, with my walkie-talkie.
I was about to say, I got my walkie-talkie out.
I now make the turn. So now the three of us, he runs up, he takes the black battering ram, he hits the door flies. He's in the house. She's in the house. I'm in the house. The three of us are now in the house. I have no idea what's in the house. So we get in there, and it's absolutely true story, just the way it happened. I'm now in the house. He goes to the left into like a dining room area. She goes to the right, and in the right is like this living room, and there's a couch. It's like a squatter's thing. It's disarray, garbage, one couch. And on that couch is a body. And when we come in, the body comes alive. This body starts screaming, and it's a woman, crazy crackhead hair. And she's screaming at the top of her lungs because I guess she didn't expect us to pay the visit that we did.
So is this a warrant?
So she's,
keep going.
She's screaming. And so the female officer is trying to calm her down. The male officer is over in the dining room. So, and I'm, I was a bouncer for many years. I'm just in complete, mode. So I make a beeline to the back rooms to see who's in there, see what's going on, and to secure the premises to whatever.
With your walkie-talkie.
With my walkie-talkie.
And your bulletproof vest.
What? In the back of my mind, I got to say, it seemed surreal. It almost seemed like, this can't be real. They can't really be subjecting me to 20 cartel members with machine guns, Al Pacino in Scarface.
Say hello to my little friend. I have a walkie-talkie. I can't say hi.
Exactly. I mean, I did. Hopefully there'd be body shots that I could, because I had the vest. But I couldn't believe that they would really do it. But yet I was all in. So I went to the back. Luckily there was nobody back
waiting
there.
for you with a fucking
Thank
shot
God.
off.
Luckily there's nobody there. So then I come back out. And as I come back out of the bedroom area, I see that the crackhead who had been on the couch is screaming and pointing at me, screaming and screaming. She didn't like me, didn't like anything about me, nothing about me. And I realized, so I now kind of drop back and I'm kind of, staying behind the wall and watching. And what I come to realize is that she's a confidential informant. and that the officer had, she trusted the officer, obviously had some relationship, didn't know who I was, didn't trust me, didn't want me part of hearing what this conversation was about. So I wait, I let that conversation play out, and then the three of us leave. And so I get back in the car, and from that point on, and we wind up later arresting somebody, and it was just like a crazy, crazy experience. But from that point on, they were very nice to me.
I'm sure.
It was like,
This guy's got balls. He just ran in with us.
It was wonderful. We all got along. We had these nice conversations about, our respective lives and what we do. And so the next day, my friend calls me up and she says, "So what did you think?" I'm like, it was unbelievable. It was this incredible experience, and I got so into it. I probably did something stupid, but I was all in, and I just had a great experience, a great time. She's like, "Oh yeah." I go, "Why? What did they say?" "Oh, they wanted to know what you thought of it." I said, "Yeah." Well, I go, "Well, what did they think?" She said, "They wanted to give you an experience you'd never forget." So I'm like, okay, all right, I get it. So
hazing the new guy.
This was kind of staged.
Yeah.
I mean, that woman probably was the victim of this. They
be you, but it was
surprised her. But I think they wanted to see what I would do. And I like you said before, I could have waited by the car. I could have waited outside the house. Probably the smarter thing to do, I guess. But in the back of my mind, I just couldn't fathom that they would subject me to that level of risk. And I was like, I'm in for a penny, I'm in for a pound. I was all in. And
both feet jumped right in.
Both feet. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was a great time.
I don't know if I have the balls to do a ride along.
No?
I don't know. Maybe at some point. Maybe a little more seasoned in life, and I'm ready to just go see some things. But I don't know. I got a lot of family as cops, and I hear a lot of crazy shit.
Yeah.
I hear state troopers. I hear New York City cops, even Suffolk. I mean, they deal with some crazy stuff.
Well, we talked about last time, and maybe we can end with this.
Yeah, I was going to say, because we're getting up there. We're an hour and a half again.
Yeah, wow. So we'll end with this, and that is that for a lot of police officers, the most dangerous thing that they can do is a car stop.
Yeah.
That's the danger. That's really the greatest risk to a cop. And so, it makes sense that if you are stopped by a cop, keep your hands on the wheel, don't get out of the car to start coming toward him with your hands in your pockets. Don't, roll down the window so you can see what's in the car. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Can I have a license and registration? Okay, it's in my pocket. Can I reach for it and do it that way? We also talked about if you're drunk when that happens, right? So, which is a bigger problem, certainly.
Slightly.
And, obviously I do a lot of steroid cases now, but I also do some other cases. I'm actually representing one of the cases in Washington, D.C., one of the January 6th cases. And I've done a lot of drunk driving defense cases. I prosecuted a lot of drunk driving cases back in the day. In terms of drunk driving cases, what most people always ask is, so if I get stopped, I've had too many drinks, do I take the test? Should I take the breath test? And that's one of the main questions people ask. And the answer is not as clear cut as people would like it to be, because I'll tell you, when you don't take the test, if you've had 2 quarts of scotch, don't take the test if you're capable of refusing at that point, because the reading you're going to blow is so ridiculous that they're never going to give you a plea offer. If you've had a car accident, even if it's a 1-car accident, but especially if it's a 2-car accident, maybe you've hurt somebody else, maybe there's another driver, it's not just a parked car, don't take the test, because they're not going to give you any kind of plea offer on it, and you're going to wind up having a breath reading that is going to give you both criminal and civil liability at a higher level. If you've got prior drunk driving convictions, don't take the test, because they're not. So basically, if there's any kind of aggravating factor like that, you're better off just not giving them any more information, making the case any stronger, because they're not going to give you a plea offer. If, on the other hand, it's your first time, you've only had a couple of drinks, there's no accident, There's no crazy, insane driving. You're not going the wrong way up a one-way street. You're better off taking the test because in most jurisdictions, and this isn't legal advice, and nothing I've said is legal advice. It's all legal information. The disclaimer that we end with, but generally, as a general rule, if it's a first-time offense and it's a low-level reading, they'll usually offer a non-criminal disposition. In New York, instead of a driving while intoxicated, it's a driving while impaired, which means you get no criminal conviction out of it. It's a lesser fine. It's a shorter period of suspension. And refusing to take the test in many jurisdictions is automatic revocation of your license. So the refusal alone has very serious consequences in terms of driving. So that's the easy way to navigate. Aggravating factors, don't take the test. First time, low reading, not too bad, not terrible driving. You're better off taking the test.
There you go. Well, listen, Rick, you're amazing. Listen.
Thanks, brother. It was fun, man.
Listen, dude, I love you. I could talk to you for 3 hours,
we
but
just scratched the surface.
We're going to have you back on, obviously,
Thanks,
again. I'm going to have you
Thank
come
you,
down again, and we'll talk about more stuff. I want to get more into the steroids side of things, and we'll get some questions. Deeper. We'll get some questions from people on TikTok, Instagram, stuff like that. And I think just, once again, like Rick said, the disclaimer, it's not legal advice, but it's nice to know these particulars when and if you're, I guess, navigating these waters.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of that in that 18-month ago, our first podcast, and people can watch that, and there's a lot on that topic there too.
It's perfect. So you got a flight tomorrow?
Yeah, I do.
And you're going to enjoy that. So how can people...
I got to go home and pack, man.
Yes. How I'm the same way. I pack last minute. How can people find you? What's your Instagram? I know you said it earlier, but
so it's Rick Collins ESQ. You can find me on Instagram at Rick Collins ESQ. You can find me on Facebook. I have a public page at Rick Collins Online, Rick Collins Online on Facebook. I am on Twitter at Rick Collins ESQ. And if you're interested in the steroid stuff and you want to kind of poke around a little bit, I have a website called steroidlaw.com, and there's plenty of information there as well. And if you just Google me, I mean, I've done so many podcasts. I've written a lot. I've done some research. I was part of a team that did a lot of research into surveying steroid use among American adults. So yeah, and so hit me up. Follow me on some of the social media pages, and
you'll learn a lot too.
Thanks,
you'll learn a lot. So, episode 15 of Risology. Thank you, Rick Collins. Peace.